The Prime Minister says Canada is doing everything it can to avoid a trade war with the United States. Speaking in Montreal, Justin Trudeau said Canada can work with the U.S. on fentanyl. He said the federal government is also prepared if that approach doesn't succeed.
This is an issue that we should be working together on, and that Canada is not the source of problems for the United States. We will continue to do that work and do everything necessary to avoid these tariffs coming in. But like I said, if on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
Companies on both sides of the border are also doing everything they can in anticipation of these tariffs. And our next guest handles cross-border logistics for Canadian and American companies. Dean Wood is the CEO of Borderworx Logistics. It has warehouses on both sides of the border, and he was recently in Washington lobbying lawmakers. He joins us from Georgetown, Ontario. Thank you very much for being on the show. How are your clients preparing for these tariffs?
Well, Ian, on the immediate front, they're moving as much inventory that they have in Canada, of Canadian-made inventory, into the U.S. ahead of these tariffs so that they can avoid the additional 25% that they'll experience. On a long term, many CEOs that we've talked to, at least a third of our clients, have made the decision that they're going to move operations, and some, if not all, to the United States.
Wow. Now, in terms of, in the short term, storing Canadian exports to the United States on the U.S. side of the border, you know, we had the first tariff threat, so I heard this was happening right across the country, and then we were told that those tariffs had been postponed for a month. So did you see those warehouses empty out and they're filling up again? Is that what's happening?
I don't think there was very many that believed that they were not going to be gone entirely. So those warehouses are continually filling up right now. They have since the first threat, and they continue to do that. There certainly is a rush right now to try to get ahead of this March 2nd.
And so how do you think, if the tariffs do go ahead, is this going to affect your business?
Well, certainly our U.S. operations have seen an immense amount of interest and growth going forward. The Canadian business is stable for the Canadian side, but the cross-border is going to definitely be affected as more goods will be brought directly into the U.S. in order to enjoy the tariff on the cost value versus the sold value that they currently do when they sell their goods out of Canadian warehouses.
You know, earlier in the hour, we heard about the province of Alberta's budget, and they're dealing with uncertainty, right? That has become, it's funny, during the height of the COVID pandemic, pivoting was a big word. I think right now, uncertainty is a big word. So if you're a provincial government, if you're an exporter, if you're an importer, it's a problem. For your business, it's a problem. And I just wonder, how do you plan as a business in the face of this incredible uncertainty?
Well, certainly it's caused a pause on any new expansion or development of warehousing and distribution in Canada, only until this whole situation settles down. It also means we have to wait until the trade community decides where do they want to have that footprint before we do any expansion. But certainly our expansion in the U.S. couldn't be going fast enough in order to absorb both what's happening domestically in the U.S. as well as what's going to come down from Canada. But I'm still very optimistic about our trade relationship.
And Dean, one last thing. So you are among many business people who have gone to Washington, D.C. to speak to lawmakers. What's the key takeaway from you from those meetings?
Well, I think it's been said before, the threat of tariffs isn't just because of trade and the trade imbalance, although those things have been talked about. There are some underlying wants, asks that the U.S. government have. I have congressmen, when I introduce myself and I say I'm from Canada, they ask me how my dairy boards are doing. And I find that to be almost interesting to see that they do have an underlying message of access to Canadian markets. And I think these kinds of tariff threats are ways in which to get those discussions and those concessions moved ahead on that agenda. And I've heard that from a number of congressmen and senators.
Dean, thank you very much for speaking with us tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate the work you do.